Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, January 4th, 2016. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change, joined, as always on Thursday, by the Director of Recruiting for 24/7 Sports, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, how are you today?
Good morning, Daniel. Doing well. Freezing my ass off here in Indianapolis.
We always talk about the weather. I just took my kids to school.
We're old. That's what old
really
people do, man. We talk about the weather.
You really can't be expected to learn in these conditions, but so be it. Obviously, it's recruiting. It's Steve, the biggest name out there, and it has been now for several weeks, Dwayne Haskins, the quarterback out of the Bullis School in Potomac, Maryland, the All-Met quarterback of the year, one of the top quarterbacks in the nation, verbally committed to Maryland. It now does seem that all signs point to him eventually being a Buckeye. The first person on this story, I can tell you this for a fact, was Steve Wiltfong. All the news you're reading out there started with Wiltfong Intel. If you could bring us completely up to speed on Haskins, signing day is kind of bearing down on us here, so I know you can't give away your sources and stuff, but maybe bring us up to speed on the Haskins experience over the last, X weeks, and then where do you see it going from here down the stretch?
Well, talking to various sources, I'd be very surprised if Dwayne Haskins does not ultimately sign with Ohio State. I think that they're the clear leader for the blue chip quarterback with the pretty release, from Maryland. The official visit was a game changer. Talking to his peers, talking to coaches at other schools that aren't even in the mix, Ohio State is the name that everybody is saying for Dwayne Haskins. I'm sure it's recruiting, so you always have to put a disclaimer on things because things can change. There's no rule book, but Ohio State sitting very pretty for one of the nation's top quarterbacks in Dwayne Haskins.
When do you have any idea on a timetable?
That's the only thing. I don't know when he wants to make a move, but Ohio State is, in my opinion, based on talking to everybody, in the driver's seat, clearly.
Yep. No doubt. And for what it's worth, I had a long conversation yesterday with someone in the DMV, or let's just say someone with extreme ties to that area. And the Maryland side of things, Maryland is preparing as if he's not going to be in the class. So once you saw the offers start going out for Maryland guys, you knew it was kind of maybe a done deal.
Exactly. And in addition to that, Ohio State hasn't offered another quarterback. So I think if Ohio State didn't think they were getting Dwayne Haskins, they would have put out another offer or two at the position. They were certainly evaluating guys, and they haven't offered anybody else. So those two things, in addition to what all the sources are saying about what Haskins is thinking about regarding Ohio State, it all looks pretty if you're a Buckeyes fan.
No question. And that would be obviously, I don't care what anyone says, it changes the scope of your class when you have a potential, franchise quarterback in there. Speaking of the stretch run here, huge visit weekend for Ohio State. 4 official visits. So huge, maybe not in numbers. We've had bigger weekends, but in terms of who was visiting, definitely big time. I want to go through these guys one by one here. The first is a name that I have to admit has not been registering much for me. Kind of caught me off guard. Mecole Hardman. Bring us up to speed on this dude.
Yeah, the 5-star athlete from Georgia got a chance to spend a lot of time with Ohio State commits in San Antonio at the U.S. Army All-America Bowl. Got along with Austin Mack really well. Decided he wanted to come up and take a visit to see the Buckeyes, and Ohio State will take a swing here this weekend. Obviously, Mecole has been favored to stay in the SEC with schools like Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee as the top contenders. You can never completely count out the Buckeyes, but there's no question they trail going into this visit just because, honestly, he obviously doesn't know much about Ohio State other than, that they're highly productive on the field and that Urban Meyer coaches them. He's more familiar with the other schools. So we'll see how it goes this weekend. I have no expectations for Ohio State going in. So, we'll see what Mecole thinks about it coming out.
He's listed as an athlete where do you really project him as position-wise?
Well, I think he's special as a Damar Mecole type player. A guy that can line up in the backfield, a guy that can play receiver. He's extremely explosive. Not many guys in the country that play the game at the speed Mecole does. Mecole could also play in the secondary, although I think he, at this point, is more comfortable on the offensive side of the football.
Okay, I want to know that. Another guy we've talked about ad nauseum making his official visit, though. His travel expenses will not be steep. Malik Harrison out of Walnut Ridge,
Well, Malik Harrison, I think, has done a good job of keeping things close to the vest. But the thing about Malik Harrison is that he goes to Columbus, Walnut Ridge, and I just don't foresee Ohio State losing a recruiting battle to Indiana and Wisconsin for a kid that lives in Columbus, Ohio. So not much coming out of the Harrison camp at this point, but I don't think much needs to come out of the Harrison camp at this point. In my opinion, it's more a matter of when and not if. And Ohio State wants this young man, and he's being recruited as an athlete, a guy that could do multiple things for the Buckeyes. So, he's the athlete recruit Ohio State's targeting right now, and I think that means something to him.
All right, let's finish off with two guys here on the official visit to. At one point in time, I thought each of them was going to be a Buckeye, and then I thought they weren't, but now I just have no idea, which is why we have you here. Damar Hamlin, the standout defensive back out of Pittsburgh.
Well, with Damar Hamlin, I think it's been the same top two for a long time, Ohio State and Pitt. At one point, my crystal ball was Ohio State. Now my crystal ball is Pitt. I think that Ohio State is very much in it. I think that if they can get the mom on board this weekend, they got an even better shot of landing Damar Hamlin. Pittsburgh's done a great job recruiting him as well, led by head coach Pat Narduzzi. So Damar knows everything he needs to know about both schools at this point. I think it'll just come down to where he feels the most comfortable. So this is another weekend for Damar to get around the coaches, get around the players, get his family around the atmosphere. I know that when Damar was in for Friday Night Lights, Damar's dad spent some time with Ezekiel Elliott's dad just hanging out. So just getting them around that Ohio State culture again and making it hard for Damar to say no when he's ready to say yes to someone.
Last but not least of the visit guys, Jordan Fuller, we've talked about him so much, the standout athlete / likely defensive back from New Jersey.
Well, I think Ohio State leads going into the visit for Jordan Fuller, top 100 athlete. My crystal ball is on the Buckeyes. He's a corner recruit for Ohio State. But Michigan is the other school to watch. Michigan's going to visit him at his school today. Michigan gets him on campus next weekend. Notre Dame and Penn State round out the top four. But I just, with where I think Ohio State is positioned right now compared to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's already gotten their official, I'm not sure that they could make a necessary move unless for some reason Jordan just has a disastrous visit to Columbus this weekend, which I'm definitely not envisioning. I think he's going to have a great visit. I think that's the only way Notre Dame could make a move here, and Penn State with the changes on their coaching staff, I think that benefits the other programs in place. So Ohio State and Michigan have, Ohio State's in the lead. Michigan has a chance to make a move right now. So the Buckeyes, if what I think is true is indeed true, the Buckeyes will look to on the field this weekend for Jordan Fuller.
Here's my theory on Fuller, that for those who don't know, he lives in New Jersey. His father played at Texas Christian. His older brother out of New Jersey committed to UCLA. So this is not a family with any kind of regional bias here. And when the dust is settling, I think they're just realizing that Ohio State's just the best option for their son.
Well, for Jordan, he really wants to go somewhere where he gels with the people. That's one of the most important things. He's already hit it off with Austin Mack and some of those guys at the Army Bowl, and the coaching staff has just done a terrific job of recruiting him. Feels really, really good about Ohio State and Urban Meyer and the direction there. And Mickey Marotti is one of the undercover parts of this process that the Fuller camp is really excited about. So, again, not a done deal. If it was, he'd be committed, but Ohio State's in a great spot with Michigan looking to make up ground.
fair to say of the four, though, the biggest visit this weekend in terms of guys who they really have a good shot at, that they really need to put on a show for, will be Damar Hamlin?
Well, if you're talking about guys that they trail for that they have a shot, yeah, absolutely. But I wouldn't take Jordan Fuller for granted now. I mean,
no doubt.
He's definitely dotting his I's and crossing his T's, and his family is very knowledgeable about this, and they're going to have several discussions down the stretch, and Michigan's going to get their say too, and obviously Urban Meyer will get a chance to do an in-home down the road, so it's not like this is going to be Ohio State's last chance to make an impression. But, yeah, from a standing standpoint, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, I mean, hell, Ohio State may be far and away the leader for Damar Hamlin, but the intel I have says that Pitt's in a good spot, and Ohio State is in a good spot too, but I think that Pitt has the edge coming in.
Speaking of having the edge, one of the many elite defensive tackles Ohio State is chasing this cycle is going to make his commitment known this weekend. Rashard Lawrence has announced that it's down to 2, LSU and Ohio State. Great news to be in the final 2. Bad news is he's from Louisiana. Should we have our hopes up?
I mean, I would go into it with no expectation. My crystal ball says LSU. It's an easy pick. My wife, your wife, everyone listening's wife would predict LSU. There's not much analysis or insight needed to make that prediction. And I haven't heard anything that makes me think that Ohio State's done anything to make it as interesting as they did with Antoine Jackson and Auburn. But I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. But right now my pick's LSU.
Yeah, that's the one that could turn the whole class on its head. If they finish up this class with Haskins, Fuller, Lawrence, and someone else, it would be an all-timer. Obviously, we don't think they're going to get Lawrence. We appreciate Steve for dropping by. You're going to want to keep it locked to Bucknuts at all times now. Signing day is bearing down to get a commitment from an East Coast quarterback at any time. Keep it locked. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Appreciate it.